Cool.
Hey everyone,
Hello.
nice to see you all today. My name is Sagi. I was supposed to be here last time, unfortunately I was sick. So Kevin was so helpful that he could step in. I've tried to catch up a little bit with what happened last time, but I don't know everything, so please don't expect me to. But I've been teaching with Hacky Future since we started in April, I think, April, something like that. And my background is that I actually I went to CBS, to business school, but I did IT as well, and then I kind of like had some programming courses, but most of my web development experience is self-taught, and that's what I've been doing, full-time web development for about 4 years now. And of course I was doing web development in school as well and things like that. I work at the Danish radio, probably know that. And I'm building the website along with like 70 people or something like that. So it's quite large organization, something like that.
You should show the website.
I'd love to show the website.
Such a clean desktop you have. It's, you must be really organized.
Yeah. So this is usually what I'm working on, and I can show you some of the latest stuff I've been doing. Actually, the menu here is one of the latest things my team has been working on. Aside from that, all the stuff that's going. Oh yeah, okay. All the stuff that's going down here is something that we've been working on, and all these things are built in React, which you will be learning about later on in this course. All the stuff up here is not React because we kind of like transitioning from that is built in Drupal, so we are transitioning from Drupal to React at the moment. But I'm not here to talk so much about my work, but I like to say just a few words about like about being a developer and how to some good tips about how to tackle being a developer and maybe more about becoming a developer. I think one of the most important things that you will experience is that becoming a good developer requires a lot of persistence. So you really need to have to try again and again and again and again. And every time you run into something and you struggle with something, you just need to get up on the horse again and try again. We've all been there. It took me, I think I started actually being serious about web development 7 or 8 years ago, and I think it took me a year before I was actually able to properly do something, because every time I sat down and tried something, it didn't work, and I spent like a month before I went back to doing something, and then I finally tried again. But at one point I really started trying and being persistent about it. And that's really what made the difference. And then another thing is that really what you need to learn here is not so much the particular skills that we're going to teach you. We're going to teach you about HTML and CSS and JavaScript and React and things like that. But I could imagine a lot of you coming out and getting a job where you may be like focusing on something entirely different within IT. But I think the most important thing to pick up here is to learn how to learn. So I'm like, I think most of the things I've learned has been from running into problems and then trying to Google them and going on Stack Overflow and other sites such as that, and trying to find the answers to my questions. And just the task of being able to Google a question you run into in your program is actually something you have to learn. It's like, it can be pretty difficult. If you're building a program and it doesn't work, it's not enough to go on the internet and type, my program doesn't work. Because, you know, there's a ton of programs out there and you won't really get any further with that. So you start to have to dig into figuring out what is it that doesn't work. And then maybe you have an idea about something that doesn't work, then you can start searching for that, and then you have to dive deeper and deeper and deeper. So really try to be really methodological, it's called like that. So try to be really consistent how you approach a problem. Try to figure out this could be the problem. Let's try this one out there. Okay, it wasn't there. Maybe try this one. No, it wasn't there. Maybe then it has to be this one. Okay, what's this one? Then try to dive into to that one and then go step by step. Try to figure out. Since it's so important to learn how to learn, I just want to show you a Slack channel that we've set up. Let's hope we don't go straight to the secret Slack. This channel is a channel I'd like to promote to you. It's called Teach Yourself. So every time you find a really nice article or you find a nice video or something like that, go in and post it on there, because probably one of the other students need the same thing. And another thing to point out is that this is not, maybe eventually this is a competition when you have to apply for a job, but this course here is not a competition. If you work together, if you help each other learn things, you're going to learn much faster. That's also one of the reasons why I'm here to teach you. That's because I learn a lot from teaching. So always try to be really, really open about everything. Try to keep everything out in the open. That's why you have the Slack channels where everyone can go in and see things. I also promote that you don't write directly to me or to Jacob when you have a question. Try to write out in the Class05 channel and then maybe tag us. And then if we have time, we'll come and answer your question. But maybe one of the other mentors are there before us and they can answer the questions before us. Maybe one of the other mentors are more qualified. Maybe even one of the other students know the answer because maybe they just asked us or something like that. So my point is, try to keep everything out in the open. Be really, really transparent. Try to, whenever you have the opportunity, if you know something that someone else is struggling with, use the opportunity to teach others. And be really, really, really persistent. You need to put a lot of work into this. And it's so clear when we see the graduates, when we have like people coming out after 6 months, the people who actually learn something is the people who really, really worked hard for it. So you need to be very persistent. But I still say anyone can do it if they try hard enough and if they try to really focus on these things. It's like the best tips that I can give you. So right. Should we
structure, timetable, and maybe homework review for if you could possibly go to, I'm gonna send you the link on Slack again. So we can actually show the timetable for today. That's the class structure, and we also need the homework review, which is on the next page.
Yes. So last time we jumped around a little bit, maybe without giving you the proper overview of what's gonna happen, and we also want to push some small breaks in between. But like last time when I said 5 minutes, then everybody were just like walking around and then showed up like after 10 minutes. So like if it's 5 minutes, then it's freaking 5 minutes, and then like preferably you don't even leave the room, right? So we kind of continue, and then there's the big break afterwards. I mean, like if you want to leave the room, sure, but like just keep mind the time. Another thing is the homework, and in the homework, like when I posted the PDF, there was this first thing about the validator. So for fuck's sake, people, please check that validator, all right? Because like we got a lot of submissions that were not validated, and there was like the point to make that you actually need to check your stuff before you send it either to your colleagues, either to your mentors, right? So leverage the power of the computer. Like it's there to help you. So please, next time. So the idea was that if you open the second link that I sent you on Slack, So I made basically a table of all the submissions. Could you scroll down a little bit? So basically everybody who submitted without any errors got reviewed. Just as fast as possible. People with errors, some might be already fixed, but I cannot check every 5 minutes if you fix your errors. So I managed to see that 2, maybe 3 places that the errors are fixed. So we'll all obviously review those homeworks that are fixed. The ones that have outdated errors, as I said, I'm not gonna touch them because you just don't pass the first requirement. So that's technical thing. Another thing that I think we need to emphasize is that because of the sheer number of you guys in here and that we don't spend 30 seconds on your homework but much longer time, I think it makes much more sense if the deadline is earlier than Saturday. Friday, I'd say, would be better, or earlier the better. Obviously, I know that you cannot hammer it out in a day, so it needs to be we need to meet in the middle. If you submit your homework, make sure that it's reviewed by your colleague and that's been checked by validator, right? So takeaways from what I discovered from what you guys submitted this week. There have been a couple of really good submissions. From what I remembered, I didn't mark them all, but one from Syria was really good. From Badar was really good. I think from Meccan was also pretty good. Because what I liked to see was when we talked about, I was making the point about article and those new HTML syntax that you don't see on this everyday HTML tutorial learn web dev in 5 minutes. So I think it's pretty important that you leverage this what's it called, semantic HTML, and I was really happy to see that some people actually encoded it in their brains and figured, okay, that thing that we do is actually an article. Some people posted the section tag, which was awesome. I've seen some floats, very nice. Whoever used footer, perfect. I've seen some brave souls using the figure tag, so you actually
awesome.
Good. So maybe can you explain why did you use the figure and what was the context if you remember, because I think it's a good learning for the others. But just speak loud so we all hear.
Maybe it perfectly aligns 2 or 3 pictures in sideways also, and it auto index some pictures.
Yeah,
And
that's
we can put also a figure caption top, bottom, up,
that's what I was fishing for. So you have an image, right? And normally an image should have the alt tag, so you describe what's on the image, but there is something called a caption for the image, which not exactly sometimes describe what's on the picture, but the author, for example, or whoever. So you can actually make a semantic meaning by making a figure and saying, okay, this is a picture, and that text belongs to the picture. So this is might be details for you at the moment because you might be struggling with bigger things, but those tiny things make a difference in the long run. And then if you know this, then you're not an average person, but you have the what's it called, semantic powers.
Just quick question.
Yeah.
So anyone in the class knows why semantics is important?
Google reads to our page.
Huh?
And it's important. Google search engine reads
Yeah.
to our
So search engine optimization is a really, really big thing. So if your page is structured with all these custom tags, not just div tags all over the place, but if you make sure to use the figure tag, if you make sure to use the article tag, if you make sure to use the section tag, the navigation tag, and so on. If you do these things, then Google have a much easier time figuring out the structure of your page. And Google only has a few seconds to figure out your page. If they can't figure out your page within a few seconds, they're not going to read everything. It's the same thing as if we're correcting homework. If we can't figure out what you're doing, then we're skipping on to the next homework because you only have so much time to do it. So that's how Google works. Another thing is screen readers, and you'll be surprised how many people have some sort of visual impairment, are blind or partially blind, and have to rely on a screen reader that actually reads aloud what it sees on the screen. And the screen reader is, of course, a computer reading the screen, so it has to understand what's going on. And those are the two main reasons for semantics.
Yeah, and on the note of semantics, I'm making sure that I remember to tell you what I'm planning to tell you. About semantics, there was this, like, I on purpose posted the quote from Albert Einstein at the bottom because I was actually hoping that you guys also gonna leverage the block quote tag. And this is exactly what Zaki said, like Google has no friggin' idea that this sentence is, like, for example, a quotation, right? But you can make it like really explicit, saying like, this is a quote. And then inside you can put a cite tag and to make it like really, really readable, because machines are like really dumb, right? So you need to make sure that they understand it. And one more thing that I want to make clear also for the future, the whole challenge I'm imposing on you guys is that whatever you get as a layout, try to stay as close to what you see as possible, because this also mimics like the real work scenario. Like nobody's gonna pay you to be a creative designer if you are hired as a developer. And if you like get a layout and then you spit out something that's like ultimately different, then everybody like be, what the hell, you know, what is this even? So try to stick as close as possible. And it's like, sometimes it's challenging, but, you know, grind through it. And hopefully, you know, we'll have more and more challenging layouts for you in the future. So those things I want you to keep in mind. So I'm gonna rewind semantics and all those articles, section, tags. Think about your headings, H1, H2, H3, H4. Some people I've seen, and this is also not the most awesome thing ever, like instead of using H2, used H3 because it's a little bit smaller. So they use like the semantic meaning to like set the proper size of the heading. But usually it is H1, H2, H3, H4. Like, you know, there is some kind of continuity, right? But one more important thing that I don't know if you know, but like if you have your body tag, you can have H1. Then if you open your article, it's perfectly fine to have another H1, right? As long as they are encapsulated in their own meaningful zones, so to speak, right? So
I actually thought you still only could have one H1 on each page, but that's changed?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. That's nice to know. So
Actually, you have to now
do it for each article, that makes sense. So
because, yeah, article is like a standalone kind of content that you can actually take out of the page and insert into another one. It should behave and be, you know, marked as something that's absolutely standalone and not dependent on the rest of elements of the page. So this is quick stuff. Yes?
We can do sections within articles and articles within sections, vice versa. It's good.
You should use, like, so if you want to be super fancy, you could use those section tags, but they should live inside of an article. Like using section in a broader context, that's not really the proper use of semantic HTML. If you want to make a section, like visual section, it's perfectly fine to use div. This is totally cool, right? But if you want to say, okay, this is a section of a bigger article, because I'm talking about, this is why I split that PDF that I sent you into smaller like subgroups, because they were sections actually, right? There was a citation section, there was a table section, and so on and so forth. It takes a while to get used to it, so keep searching and keep looking, because like you won't get it in like one take. This is like, I learn about this every day also, because there's so much of it. Yes?
You are saying those were the sections, then what about divisions? Those are not divisions, profile and experience. Those were sections.
Well, you know, it depends also like what you want to say, like what you want to communicate as a developer, right? Some people would say that, no, this is not a section, right? This is just a paragraph. with a heading. Some people would say, well, this is a section. So for me, this is a section, basically, right? But you could argue that maybe not. I would strongly recommend, though, to use a section because this is pretty easy to like say, this is a piece of a content that has a paragraph and a heading. Looks like a section of a bigger article. 25 passed. Now we have 5 minutes break. Friggin' 5 minutes sharp, and then we do some hands-on stuff.
Setting a timer.
I'm actually not sure why I never got my name doesn't stand on the list.
Maybe I have then didn't gather this for. Can you send me or can you post it on class Slack again?
No.
I might have missed that, and if so, I'm sorry.
It's alright.
I think I'm just going to post the HTML for them on Slack.
Or we can actually also show them the Lorem Ipsum generator.
I don't think it's so relevant right now. Oh, that's the OBS. I don't want to stop down. I was thinking about the screen sharing. Yes.
Maybe I'll
It's annoying. I stopped paying for Evernote, and all my other notebooks are synchronized because I used to pay. But the Hacking Future one I created after I stopped paying, and that means it's not synchronized. So I just email those links to myself.
My general recommendation: move to Markdown and iCloud, and you are good to go. I keep everything in Markdown in my stuff. Platform independent,
Yeah, sure.
vendor
Makes
independent,
sense.
right? Searchable.
well, I've been in lots of things,
So just use the operating system. Check.
Yeah, so I just do like
Yeah, sure.
Maximize.
Yeah, maybe I should find a way to export all of my Evernote links.
Of course, it's
But
not
it can
as
be-
flexible as Evernote.
Yeah, of course.
Then check the other one. This one more updated normal.
Okay, I just wait posting it because people are writing right now. So now it's ready at least.
I just posted.
Yes. Yeah, I'm adding it to our list. Thank you.
Fuck, I just lost the time. Yeah. It's lost of time. I'm trying to maximize all the time I have. And I use enormous
Very good that it's resolved like in one way.
All right, let's get started.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
I have a question about the role. Like, how important is it to put the roles for ARIA?
Area roles.
Yeah, for putting like the banner, for
Well,
the footer, for
I think
because I put them. Then when I searched, they said like it's unnecessary to put some like for the navigation for the main tag because
Yeah.
it's difficult. It's default. Role.
Yeah, so if you use the navigation tag, the HTML5 navigation tag, a screen reader will figure out that it is navigation.
Yeah.
The most important thing about the area tags, I think, is to use the area hidden tag. Whenever you have something that you want the screen reader to skip,
Yeah.
because maybe it's something that will just confuse the screen reader. So if you have something, if you have something that's purely for visual purposes, then great, thanks. Then you may want to hide it for the screen reader because it might not be something that makes sense once it starts reading it aloud for the user.
Is there a way on Windows to test the roles? Because I tried the Windows reader,
Yeah.
but it didn't read.
Well, I know there's on Mac, but that's probably not gonna help you. I think you do need a standalone screen reader for that.
Yes, but also if you look there, I don't remember the name right now, but there's a plugin for Chrome that does the screen reading for you.
Okay.
And one important thing is that like ARIA roles and stuff like that, you can worry about that at some point, right? But you get a lot of accessibility problems fixed by doing the proper HTML markup, basically, right? So roles would also come handy once you start doing some JavaScript. But if you use button element, right, instead of a link, that's already good. You don't need any role, and so on and so forth. So keep that in mind. But I would say maybe this shouldn't be our like top focus.
But really good question, and nice that you looked into area roles.
I have a question.
Yeah.
It's about the main tag.
Mhm.
Because I see there's an article tag and the main tag. So if we put the main tag and then the article, is this the correct way?
So the main tag is wrapping everything that's
The whole things.
like the content area. So you don't want the main tag to wrap the navigation, for instance, and the footer and things like that, header and footer and things like that. But the main content area, is usually where you use it, and then within that content area, you'll typically have your articles.
Okay.
In theory, I guess you could have articles in your footer, but I don't know who
Could-
does that.
Yeah, well, one more thing about the article tag is like this is not meant for articles from newspapers. That's very important. Article is the name of the tag, but it's like if you check the definition, if you go to like the manual W3C something whatever it is, the spec. I'm talking about W3 spec. Then it would say that it's a piece of a standalone content. So you can actually wrap your comments in an article tag because they are also standalone entities. If somebody writes a long comment about something, right? You could actually like treat it as a standalone piece of information, for example. So theoretically, you could have your, I don't know, some additional information in the footer, and then you have articles. Article tags, sorry, not articles.
I make newspapers and we use the article tags for articles.
Yeah, that's the default.
But you can use it for a lot of other things. That's the point. Okay, so let's get on with the exercise now. I'm just gonna get my display up there again. So I want to do an exercise on how to do layouts. And we are going to be looking into doing a, oh, I forgot to share the entire screen once again. Oh, damn it, I hate that. Cast desktop, to that one, yeah. Cool. Yeah, we're going to make two different layouts. One where we're going to be utilizing a floated layout, which is the way that the web has been built for, I don't know, like 20 years or something like that now. And we'll be trying to use something called Flexbox, which is something that has been around for, I don't know, maybe 5-10 years, but it's only within the last maybe 3-4 years that you could commonly use it, because there's always this thing that browsers have to catch up. So if you build something today, you have to expect that people are going to see this on various different browsers. So if someone comes and they're using an old browser, it may not work. But the thing is, Flexbox has been around long enough now that the general community agree that that's something that we can use quite safely. So we're going to be teaching you both things because floated layouts are extremely common. So there's very big likelihood that you're going to end up in a situation where you have to fix a floated layout on an existing site. But for the future, I would usually recommend using Flexbox because, as the name implies, it's a lot more flexible. So let's get on with it. So I'm just gonna post a snippet here on Slack, and I would very much appreciate if you all go and code with me. So please go and copy this snippet and create an HTML file. So
Where should I take this? On Slack?
Yeah, on Slack. I didn't set up a folder before, but you create a folder. You can do it on the terminal, or you can do it in your operating system, however you like. And I know that. Oh no, that's not even set up. I know that last time you were using Visual Studio Code, I forgot to install that on my computer, so I'm using something called Sublime Text, but it works basically the same. It's just a text editor. So I'm just going to create a index.html, and let's create another file. Oh. And I'll take a break in a second and give you a chance to catch up. I can't remember if I have a snip for that now. Honestly, I'm always a little bit like, I hate writing doc types. I can never remember them properly, so I always Google them. Just to get the right one. I don't know, it's that one. No. Okay. I used to have like a snippet for this, but somehow I messed that one up. That's annoying. Doc type starter. Yeah, that looks right. I'm just gonna throw that on Slack for you as well. Up. Like that. And maybe let's remove the JavaScript part. You don't need that. See, we don't need to do any old Internet Explorer style sheets. Let's have a look at what I called my styles again. So I just called it style.css and it's in the same folder as index. So I'll fix that up right away as well. So it's like that. Okay, that should be good. So you can copy that one and put that into your HTML file. Everyone with me now? So make sure you have an HTML file that contains the doc type and a style file. Can you run around and make sure that people are following
I'll
along?
do that in 3 seconds. I'm just adding the homework submissions because we got 2 more on the way.
Right. So something I like to do just to test that I've linked my styles right, because that's something that messes up all the time, is I go to the style CSS and then I just do body and then I do background color and red or something like that. So if I go and open my my index file now, I just get a red page. So so make sure that you can do the same thing.
I have a question. If I create a style here, and I write my CSS in it, isn't it the same as having 2 open? I mean, like you've done that. Isn't it the same as having a CSS style, like separate? Yes. I mean,
You mean you could do styling there? Yeah. It is the same, but it's better to keep it in a separate file. We'll be covering in detail why that is later, I think. Maybe I'll address that after this. Probably a good idea to do in class.
Maybe create a new folder, call it like week 2 or something like that.
so what?
Yes. Now if you drag this into your
If I forget to address it, please remind me. So, everyone with me?
So now we
We have the basic file.
then you can add a file. Here, yes, new file, and this is index.html.
Does your CSS look like this?
And now we need another one called style.
Okay,
Dot. Yes.
So if I was too fast when I show you how to test, this is what it looks like, just to make sure that the background is red.
So if you copy paste like what you wrote in the file like before, and then you're good to go.
white one.
Yeah, let's try.
You'll also
This
need
one
that.
is the one that I found.
You also need that part, right? So you need all the stuff on top.
I don't know how to
so on, right?
Okay, so I see a lot of you already figure out the next step, which was to combine this one up here.
And that one. And I try to keep
So this one has to go inside the body, right? And then you end up with something that looks like
Go back
this.
to your HTML file.
So
And did you save that file?
you all have the basic structure one?
That indicates you did that thing, I guess. Just hit Command S and try to refresh it. Now you need to highlight that window. Go back to now refresh.
Okay, so I'm going to continue trying to build the layout now. No, let's do one thing first. Let's go out and take. Let's go out and take this folder and just make a copy of it, because this is something you're going to do a ton of times. So let's make a copy and just call it Hack Your Future Starter. That's just a basic HTML thing. There's nothing crazy about that. So you have an HTML file and you have a style sheet and they're hooked up.
What do you mean? I'm not sure. I'm with you on that one. What did you just do?
I just copied the project, so I have 2 copies of the project, just so I can save a backup of the project, because now we're going to edit this one here.
So whenever you start a new project, you can just use this. This is like a skeleton.
Yeah.
Whenever you start. So you can just copy paste, duplicate. Go to the final revealing find. Duplicate.
All good?
Okay, I'm just gonna give you a little overview of what we have in here. So if we have a look in the browser, we just have a ton of text. Oh, this one is not up to date. Or is it? Yeah, I guess it is. Okay, so we have some text here, but what's interesting here is that I made sure to include these semantic tags that we talked about. So we have a header here. We have an aside. Aside is usually, it doesn't have to be a sidebar, but very often you use it for sidebars. So this is a structure you'll probably see again and again. And then we have the main tag, which is where the main content is going on. That's what we just discussed before. And then we have the footer tag. Maybe it's a good idea to just show you what we're trying to achieve before we go on. So we're trying to make a really simple basic layout that you've seen a ton of times before. So we have the header up here in the red, and then we have the green sidebar, and then the main area is the blue one, and the footer is the yellow one. And I spend a lot of time trying to find the right colors.
Are we recording this lesson today?
Yeah, we are. So, all right. So that's what we're trying to achieve. And first off, we're going to try to do a layout based on floats. And what are floats? Anyone have an idea what floats are?
Float is moving
Yeah.
content.
Yeah. So originally floats were a thing that was designed for making sure that you could float text around a picture. So if you have a picture, you can get the text to go around the picture. And at some point, someone really clever who wanted to build a website that didn't look like just a a long PDF document or something like that. Some guy who wanted to build something that was like really layouted and looked more like something you might find in a magazine or something like that. He had the idea that you could try to use these floats to build real layouts, something like we're going to build now. But they were never really designed for that, and we'll see that it'll cause some problems along the way. But anyway, they've been good enough for more than 10 years that they've been like the dominating way of building websites. So they can't be that bad, right? The main thing here is, if we have a look at what we're trying to achieve again, the main thing is this one is going to go on the left and this one is going to go on the right. The header up here is not very difficult to achieve because by default any div will fill out 100% of the width, and the same for the footer. So the main challenge is what's going on in here, where we have to have these two settings next to each other. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a rule for a site, and let's make it width 40%. Notice that I'm using percentages. That's because we want to have it be a responsive grid, so you can do like this and it will resize. You could use pixels, but then it would not be resizing when you do like this. And then we have the main.
Can you increase that?
Yeah, the size. Maybe the contrast could be better as well. That's better, right? Yeah. Okay, so we set aside to 40% and width to 60%. Oh, that's not the page. So you can see there's something going on here. Okay, I think we need to add the colors first because right now, oh no, sorry, I forgot. We left this one in. Without that one, we'll, oops. It'll just be white. And let's try to add in the colors so we can distinguish which ones are which. So the header, that one is going to be red, right? Then we have the side, which is going to be green. And then we have the main, which is going to be blue. And then we have the footer. Better do color. It's going to be yellow. I'm just going to make sure that it looks right, and then I'm going to go back to the code. Yeah.
Can you go back to that screen with the colors? Mm-hmm. Does everybody have the same?
Make sure you have
effect? This. Because it's better that you don't get lost, on the way, because it's hard to catch up afterwards.
Yeah, you do color instead of background color. On the side.
Actually, that's
like he was doing. He was like setting the backgrounds. I mean, like you could stick with the color, but it's gonna be easier for you.
So if you want to fill out the colors, it's actually the text colors on top. So make sure you pick a color that's a high contrast ratio to what you have. So I think I would pick white for all of these except for the yellow one, and I pick black for that one.
Can we go to advertising instead of asking
yeah, but if you put something on body, it's going to affect everything. Right now, what we're trying to achieve is have different colors on all of these.
No, I mean.
But of course, yeah, if you want to do white on everything, You can put that one, and then you can do black on the footer. Yeah, that's a very good way to do it as well. So
can I see the code again? Thank you.
Guys, one more comment. Like, mind what Zaki is doing here. Like, you know, I've seen some of you trying to cram all your properties in one line, or like have a closing bracket in here. Potentially you could do that, but like, why would you want your life to be miserable after like 15 minutes? So try to keep that structure, right? So like you have a clear indication that, you know, this is the actual element, these are the properties, and like you can read it instead of like creating some really nasty visual problems afterwards. So
yeah, keeping your CSS like nice and organized is a good thing, and that's also why I could have just put this one. I could have put that one up here, but you see, I have an idea here that I want to keep my colors in one section and my layouts in another section.
Well, I mean, like, you know, it's why would you have like an empty line in here, for example, before that, right? But that's just some people prefer to have one line between elements. But this is up for a preference, actually, right?
Yeah.
But like, as long as it looks like this, more or less, it's readable then, at least. Yes.
Okay.
First of all, did you put this in the same folder? Oh, it works. That's good. Almost. So the problem is that.
Let me just see a quick show of hands. How many of you have the different colors like this now? Okay.
Can you go back to the CSS, please?
Yeah.
So why do you have a body, for example?
That's probably the first one we added.
Oh, we had it? But
yeah, I removed it again.
Are we gonna put it?
No.
Okay. So you don't need the body. Then why don't you have in your header? What it's called header, not header.
Why is my text filling up so much?
Yeah. See, that's because I want to use the top part of the file only for color assignments. So I know this is where I find my colors. And then I do the next section where I have my layouts, just to keep things grouped together. Because I think it's easier to read like that. But I could easily put the width, I could put that up in the side there. It's a matter of preference. Normally I would put these in 2 different files. But we don't make a lot of different style sheets today. That would be more confusing, I think.
And it's also like a matter of a taste and like your habits. Because for example, like when I code, I put everything inside of like the element I'm trying to target, but I just like sort it alphabetically.
Yeah.
So I also know always where to find stuff. So it's like there are no right and wrong answers in this particular thing, I guess.
I think we'll try to get on with the next thing. So you see here, this doesn't really look like the layout that we're trying to do, right?
Yeah.
So any idea what we need to do about this page to get a floated layout?
Side and main should be float.
Huh?
Side and main should be float.
Let's try that. Aside and main should be float. Okay, so since they have the same rule, maybe try to do like this, so I don't have to repeat myself. And see how that works. I'm just going to check that it works, and then we go back. Okay, interesting.
Yeah, getting close to the break.
What time is that?
It's 1 p.m. Are we doing the break now, or are we just going until we're done?
It's important to finish this one before this.
Yeah, I know. But maybe we can just squeeze it.
But let's finish this one, do the break, and then I do the text parts. And then the seconds.
Does anybody struggle, or it doesn't work for anybody?
So hopefully a lot of you have something that looks like this now. Can I see a quick show of hands? How many have this? Right? Let's have just a few more before we continue. So this is what you need. Any questions right now?
Well, I would like to ask why is my text filling up so much of my screen?
We'll address that in a second.
That should be both should be left, or one should be left and one should be right?
Yeah, that's a good question. So he's asking if both should be floated to the left or one of them should be floated to the right. Right now, I just floated both of them left. And as long as you're using up all of the space in there, that's perfectly fine. Sometimes, so you know, the point is if you float something left, it's going to stick to the left. If you float something right, it's going to stick to the right. But if you float something left and the thing next to it is also floated left, it's going to stick to the thing that's left of it. So you have the same result. But if there's space in between, it will make a difference. So let me just show you that. So there's one more thing that we plan to show today, and that's how you can use the inspector in the browser. Have you tried using that before?
Yes.
Cool. So if you right click here, you can go and you can say inspect. And let's try to change the width here. So you see what happens. Now I set that one to 35. And since both of them are floated left, we have this one 35, this one is 60, and then we have the remaining 5% out there. But if we do float right, things just look completely different. That is... I actually forgotten how... Oh, that's because I have the same rule for both of them. That's why. So I need to make a rule only for main, because this one was affecting aside and main, but I need to do one only for main. Oh, not right. Yeah. So now you see, if you float one of them right and you float the other one left, then you make sure that they always stick to the side of the screen, but you might have some space in the middle. But since we're going to try to manage the percentages, so it always adds up to 100, then it should not really matter if you do one or the other. So yeah, and when you do some changes here and you want to undo them, you can just refresh the page and they'll be done. It'll be gone again. Okay, so how do you like the layout that we have now? How do you like this layout?
It's perfect.
It's perfect.
Ship it. That's so good.
Ready to ship. So you had a question?
Yeah, I had a question. Why is my text filling up so much?
Yeah, so the text is really filling up everything on the display. It's not easy to read, right? Okay. So I have a suggestion for that. Let's try and make a rule so we have a little bit of space around the text within all of these boxes. Okay? So what I'll do is I'll do a rule that targets, let's do it from the top. Header, and then the aside, and then the main, and then the footer, right? And let's keep it on the screen. And then I just want to do padding, and then maybe do 30 pixels. Right? You know what that means when I write padding 30 pixels? From all directions. So it's the same as doing padding top 30 pixels, padding bottom. Yeah, I think you get the picture. So it's the same as doing all of them at the same time, and it's the same as doing like this. So it's just shorthand. So, whoa, everything broke. Anyone have an idea why that might happen?
Because of the width.
because of the width. So the width is not the same anymore. But why is the width not the same? Because you see, if I go to this one, it says 40%. And if I go to this one over here, did I get the right one? No, the footer is suddenly up here because it's just completely broken. If I go to this one, it says 60%. 40 and 60 is 100. What's wrong here?
Yeah, but we are also giving in the padding 30%. 30%
Yeah.
To each element.
Right.
That's also adding on the top.
So actually the padding that we just added, this thing here, is included in the width of the element. So when I say that something is 60%, that's a blue down here, it's 60% from here to here. That's pretty annoying, right? Because how are we going to know this one? And we made this one in pixels and the other ones are in percent, so we can't really figure out how many percent are. You see, we have 30 pixels here, then we have 30 there, and we wanted to sit together with this one's 30 and 30, so it's like 60, it's 120 pixels all together. That's just confusing. So fortunately we have a really easy fix for that, and that's something that I usually always do on all of my websites. As one of the first things is I say star. Do you know what that means? Everything, every element on the page. And then I have the rule that's called box sizing, and then we say border box. So let's just see what happens. It fixed the layout. Excellent. So what box sizing border box does is it simply tells us that when we do percentages, we wanted to include the padding. So you can see out here, here in Chrome, you have this little figure that shows the box model. And normally, when you set the width, it's only the thing in here. But when you do border box, it's everything including the border that's out here. So that one is included in the 60% of the 40% of what we're doing. Right. And so there's still kind of an issue here, I see, because you see, we don't have any padding around this guy down here. Why is the text coming up here? Can anyone explain that?
Because the padding is up there, like the padding is for the box, not for the text.
Let's try to inspect this box. Where do we have the padding here?
Up.
Yeah, up in there with the objects.
Up here?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. So apparently our footer is sitting right under the red stuff. But how does that happen? Why does that happen?
The floating is not here.
Yeah. So the problem is whenever you take something and you float it, you take it out of the document flow. So what does that mean? That means that the browser does not know how large are this one and how large is this one. So it doesn't really know probably how to put things underneath. It does know with the text here, but it can't really probably tell. So so what we need to do is we need to do something called clear fixing. And the way we do it is we can go down here on the yellow one. Now I'm just going to try it out in the browser before we do it in code. So we can go down on the yellow one down here, and then we can do clear, and then we can do left. See what happened? So suddenly the yellow box starts where we wanted to start instead of starting all the way up there. And what does that clear rule mean? That means that we tell that we don't want to have anything sitting to the left of us. No matter what, don't have anything to the left of us. The only thing we want to the left is the side of the screen. What you often do is you do clear both, just so if you have like a layout with floats the other way around, that will work as well. So let's add that one to our code. That's like the final little ingredients. So we have the side main. Okay. Yeah.
You have the footer.
Yeah, we do have the footer up here, but I prefer to keep this section for colors. So we could put it up there. It's up to you. You're welcome to do that. I just like to keep my layout together. Yeah. And now I refresh the page and it still looks good. So I think we're just going to give you a chance to catch up, and then after that we have a break. So if you finish early, you can take a break early, but then it's difficult to know when we meet again.
Let's just set a moment, the
Yeah.
the time when we're back.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
20 past.
Yeah. Okay, so if you're finished, you can take a break now, and then we meet again at 1:20, and we meet here sharp. And if you have issues, we'll stick around to make sure to help you. Note yourself, keep duct tape ready.
Was it clear?
Yeah. So it is now what?
Yeah.
Oh, this is
Right. What about here? I missed something. Yeah,
now it's
this stuff.
and task, then we have
Horrible.
20
Is that-
until
It says it's from the phone.
Yeah.
Save it.
I'm just gonna zoom out again then.
As you check.
So if you can't read, you have to come closer.
What?
Padding.
This is incredible.
Go to padding and check it.
Okay, so what's actually
So
now it's gonna be the flexbox?
I mean,
Padding. So what you have here. Ah, that's 30 pixels.
and when are we gonna have media burst? Are we gonna have any media burst?
Percentage.
Yeah, I was actually planning to do it here, so let's
30%. So pixels means that's
do it
much.
here first.
okay.
Alright.
Yeah.
Why don't you have these details about inspect?
Do we have 10 minutes or?
Until 20 past. 1:20.
One question, what editor do you use in the work?
We use PHP Storm.
PHP Storm?
Yeah, it's also called WebStorm. It's just this one is specific for PHP, but it works for all kinds of things.
If I want to learn one, should I learn the web store?
Now, if you want to see the code
WebStorm.
anything, then you
Because that WebStorm is more generic. But this one it costs quite a bit of money. I can't remember how much is it. And
Actually, I have it. I have access to it because I'm studying, so
okay. Yeah,
I have the
it has a lot of
access to it.
features. It's really great.
press not the actual
But I mean, for the stuff we're going to be doing here, you can do everything just as fine in Sublime
That's
Text.
correct. I use Brackets, but
So, and you'll never get the whole thing.
big files.
Like that.
That's
No,
not
it's fine.
Always
you have
gonna
to
get
read those.
style for that or that.
Learn something
So
like
it's always
stable. So I think Visual Studio or web store or PHP store. Because they are like the most basic things.
I have a Mac, so I can run Visual Studio like the real big one. I wouldn't recommend that one. But the small
Visual
one,
Studio is
Visual Studio
horrible for
Code.
web.
No. But the small one, Visual Studio Code, is really nice.
But it's not like for big
I
projects.
have no idea.
Yes.
Yeah. If you want to have a proper IDE where you have like it's suggesting
Because
that
you have, it looks like you have a green
Alright, I see
background.
right?
on the market one, or you need WebStorm, or what else is people using these days? Yeah. I think most people who want to go for an IDE usually
Use
WebStorm.
Visual Studio Code, really. Like, trust me.
I use Visual Studio Code,
Excuse me.
but
It's the
just
best.
for simple
I
things.
don't know
I'm
what
thinking
is
for
happening, I just
future,
copied
like
the
for
same.
companies, what do they do?
Visual Studio Code. And like usually no, like the companies like so this is like
Why it is coming like this? I'll
The
show you.
usually first of
This
all
one.
it's like Visual Studio has a lot of like out of the box improvements.
Side
So
40
it's
means
easy to
60.
set up, like in the company, as long as you do your job, whatever.
No, it won't work.
Okay.
Because like every developer has his own setup and every like set of plugins and set of styles and colors and everything, right? So if you can make something work, that's it.
Oh, I have an idea now. I think you set the padding to be way too big.
Well,
Paddy
this is-
30%
Yeah.
pixels. Pixels
Okay.
instead of percent. Try that. Try typing pixels and let's see.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay,
So,
now got it. Oh,
let's
I
see if that
missed
works.
it. Yeah, thank you.
Let's just check it.
Yep, thank you.
Apart from me here, I also have a problem. And actually, why do I have to scroll down to see the whole page? Why can't I see the whole page?
Oh, you mean because on my computer you can? Yeah.
Exactly.
It's just because my computer has way bigger resolution. So,
What's the question?
this is why it fills so much on his computer. But it's true that it looks bigger.
Looks a lot.
But do you have any zooming going on? Yeah, you had zoom on. So you know plus and then 0 to reset it. So,
Awesome.
yeah, okay, that looks more.
Thank you
more
very
normal.
much. That was awesome.
So is the schedule completely blown up now?
Yes, kind of, but it's fine.
I told you.
Yeah. Sorry. One thing though.
But it's better to have a plan
Yeah.
than adjust the plan than not having a plan.
It's still, you know, it's still something which we can agree on anyway. I think though, maybe it's a little bit confusing for them with those two, layout and color. Maybe. Not now. I mean, like that. Not anybody got lost, but I think if you keep it as one.
But you mean Flexbox and float?
No, like if you, I'm talking about your CSS structure.
Ah,
Then
yeah,
you,
okay.
then you
Yeah,
split,
yeah.
like then you think about color layout and so on. I mean, like, I don't think that anybody got lost, but a general observation. Does anybody like at your company also like write that, or is it just you? Because I haven't seen that too much.
It was just my thought because usually I put it in separate files.
Like layout and colors. Oh,
sure.
nice. What do you write? Like SAS or post CSS?
Yeah,
CSS.
And I'll show you like
And use BAM or any kind of.
yeah, usually we use BEM. Just show you my how I structured for my own website because that one is.
This is what you roll with every day. WebStorm.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. Well, actually, that was not such a great case. I just want to show you that when I do React, we put it like separate files for each component. But that's actually not the same. But on the other hand, I have like my imports, so I keep like over here. I have a style folder. I have one for colors, one for fonts. Then this is global styling, and then one for mix-ins, and this one is just importing everything.
Yeah,
so I
but
have
this
one
is common
file.
pattern, right? So in colors,
Yeah.
you would have all your color variables, right? Or like
Exactly.
the whole
Yeah.
what's it called
Yeah.
color swatches, or.
Exactly. Yeah.
But then like you have an element and then dash layout dash.
Yeah.
Like what colors, or like how do you keep that organized? Because you said that you have separate.
But that's true because here it's actually color assignments.
Yeah.
And I would have that on the element itself.
Okay.
I was just thinking like I want to show how to keep things like structured, but you're right. It's more assignments because usually that part would be for setting up variables. I would put that in. a separate file.
Yeah.
But
I mean,
the
like,
color assignments themselves.
I
would
could
probably keep
understand that somebody's like using that, like if they understand what they're talking about, right?
Yeah.
But if you're really new, you're like, okay, two things, are they like overriding each
Yeah,
other?
maybe it's not so intuitive. That's right.
I think we are at 20 past and nobody's back. Yeah. 20 frigging past.
So. Okay, so let's do exactly the same thing once more. Okay? No, actually, there's just one little thing I want to add before we do that. So you read about media queries for today, right?
Media queries.
So let's see if we can try to include media queries.
One thing, like this like rewind. Is everybody on the same page that you need to do reading of week 2 for week 2 before you do week 2? Because apparently you're not on the same page. So that was on that reading list. So
but
you're gonna get a recap.
We'll cover media queries now. So what we want to be doing is we want to make sure that this website will work properly on a mobile phone. If you do like this, it's like, okay, yeah, actually let's do the proper mobile. So if you go and open the inspector again, you know we have this button up here. And here you can choose different mobile devices, so it will emulate that. So let's just stick with iPhone 7. And I mean, like, you can't read this stuff, especially if it's on a mobile phone, it will be really, really tiny, right?
Did you open it in which browser did you open it?
Yeah, so it's just in Chrome.
Okay.
And if you could go on inspect, sorry if I'm going a little fast sometimes, then there's a button up here. That one is the device toolbar, so that's the stuff that will emulate a phone. So do you have any ideas how we can resolve this? That we have these completely unreadable sections down there?
With media query.
Media queries is the tool. What is we going to use it for?
And we could use with min and max width.
Yeah?
Then we can have all the devices according to their width.
Okay, so a media query allows us to do something special when we have certain screen sizes.
Yeah.
Cool. That's a really nice tool to have. So when we are on this screen size, how would you make this layout work? Yeah?
I think we can get margin also. We put margin also.
Yeah?
And the width.
So if we change the margin now, it will work better on a mobile phone?
No, we can give a limit about it, like up to this pixel, it should be on this size, and this pixel is
So I
like
think we
this
make
way.
like the screen fix it for mobile.
Yeah?
And then we handle the big size of screens. I mean, like mobile first.
Yeah. But I'm looking for a very specific answer here.
In this situation, we can use flexbox.
Yeah?
And for the media query, we can use one underneath another. Then it should.
So one underneath another one.
It's like a site and main. It should be underneath one another.
Oh yeah, that sounds interesting. That's the answer I'm looking for. So let's just do a quick test of what it is we want to see without using media queries first. So if we want to have these two underneath each other, I guess we could just like remove this one. Now they're underneath each other. Is this what you wanted?
Yeah, something like this. Then you can.
But you can't read them still.
Then you can use a media query for width, maybe.
Yeah, so let's change the width. That's a good idea. So we set that one to 100%. And that one to 100%.
Yeah. Then it
Now
should be
suddenly they're under each other, and you remember this one is the main part of the page, and we can read everything on a mobile phone.
And of course, you can put some border or something like this. Then there is a gap between from
Yeah,
each section.
and we don't have to remove float here. That was just to show you before. But now I just changed the width to 100% for those who were 40 and 60 before. But now when I go on a desktop, it looks like this. That wasn't what we wanted, right?
Yeah.
So this is where we need media queries.
Yeah.
So as we just discussed, a media query allows us to do specific things on specific screen sizes. I'll just show you the basic syntax of a media query. So something like this, or typically I use this one. So you see, you start out with the keyword media, and then you have one condition is saying that this is only for screen. You can also do layout specifically for printing. And then we add another condition, which is that our display has to be a minimum width of 30 EM. EM is just another unit to determine sizes. So it could have been 30 pixels or something like that. I think we'll find some other time to cover EM. And then there's another condition here, which is orientation landscape. So that's if you're on a mobile phone, it can actually tell you if you're in landscape or if you're in portrait mode. So let's see if we can employ that in our layout here. So we know what we need to do is once we go on a mobile layout, we know that we need to make the width 100% on those two who were floated before. And otherwise we want to do nothing. Okay? And you mentioned mobile first. Do you know what that is?
Yeah, I mean, like we make as a CSS file for mobile, and then we make like a special condition to handle big screens. Like
Yeah.
we add this media.
And mobile first is a great practice where you start out designing everything for mobile. And if you do that, it's usually easier to have a working desktop layout after. Mobile first is really, really awesome. We're going to do the opposite today. Because we started out doing the desktop layout. So, I recommend that you use mobile first normally. So we're going to add the media query here. So I do media and I want it to apply to screens. And then I do and. I just finished the rule here before. So we want to target small displays now. So that means I'll be using the max width. So let's try that. Max width. How much should we say?
Well,
640, 800?
I would say 640.
640. So we're deciding now that if it's less than 640 pixels wide, then it's a mobile phone. Okay?
or a tablet, if it's a small tablet, right? Keep in mind that, like, this is also one thing that you should be like when you're developing for anything, it's like rarely that you develop for one particular device, right? And they come in different shapes and different sizes or whatnot, right? So this is basically, you should think about it as a device that's up to 640 pixels wide, but that could be easily even a watch, possibly, right? Because it's pretty narrow. So there's a big variety.
But there's a really good point there, because have a look, I have like a really big tablet here. This one shouldn't be using a mobile layout. That makes no sense, because this display it's like bigger than your display, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So I need to have the desktop layout on my tablet, right?
No.
So that's why we use the pixels rather than going in and say, figure out if this is an iPad. If it's an iPad, do this. If this is a Samsung, do this. If this is, then we have to maintain a huge list of every single device in the world, and that's just going to be a mess.
And that being said, one more detail about tablets in particular. Think about that if they're in landscape, actually, they are supposed to work on like a desktop website, right? But if you twist them to a portrait, it's a very common practice that you actually introduce something in between kind of layout, or you give it a mobile layout. So yeah, a lot of things to worry about.
Let's get on with this. So we have this media query right now. And this media query, we can't just start doing like padding 30 pixels or something like that, because it won't know padding, apply padding to what, right? It doesn't tell us. It's not you telling to do it on footer, or we use the padding. Where did we set that? We said, yeah, that's right here, right? Here we set the padding for header, blah blah blah, all those guys. But here it doesn't really have a reference what to set the padding on. So this one here is a container that's kind of supposed to go alongside other rules. So we can take this rule in here, and we can put that rule inside our media query. And then we can do the padding, instead of 30 pixels, we can do 10 pixels. And if we try that out, and we try to go down below a certain size, I think now we should have a padding of 10 pixels. And it's a little difficult to see like that, so let's try something else. You see iPhones. It's okay, cool. So you can see it says 30 pixels. Damn it.
They only set it up like 6.4.
But it doesn't look like 30 pixels.
Crank it up to 50 or something, or see if it's
okay. Let's use something else. So what we actually wanted to do was we wanted to address these two guys here, aside and main, and we want to make sure that they are 100%. So I'm going to make a rule that affects those two, and I set the width, and I set it to 100%. Let's see if that works. That also doesn't work, so we have a mistake somewhere.
Yeah, but the size
So.
fixed to iPhone 7, I think.
Shouldn't be a problem. Unless of course it is because our media query is still too. Let's try to turn that one off, and then test it like. Yeah, it was actually. So we just need to set a larger breakpoint, because you can see here, once I reach 630, 640, it's still under each other, and now boom, 641, and now they're sitting next to each other, right? So maybe we'll try to expand the media query. So let's just do 800 pixels instead. And try it again. And then we can do the mobile emulator. I don't get why it's reporting.
Can you switch to like the iPhone or something, maybe overwritten?
Oh, I know. I think I know why. It's because we don't have the. We have forgotten the responsive. What's it called? Meta type.
Oh yeah, the scaling.
So this one we need to have. I usually use this one.
Missing some viewport in HTML tag.
Huh?
Maybe you are missing some HTML tag for viewport something like this.
Exactly. That's what I'm adding now. So you see, there's no viewport tag here, and now I'm adding that one. So this one is going to tell the mobile phone not to zoom out, because normally a mobile phone, if it encounters a website that's like a 2-column layout or something like that, it's going to try to zoom out so the user can like scroll around on the page and zoom in on what he wants to see. Because if it's not a mobile friendly site, that's how you used to do it. But by adding this one up here, we are telling the phone that this one is a mobile friendly site, and it should not try to zoom the site. So normally the browser on the mobile phone is trying to help us to make the site so we can like zoom in and things like that. But if we do this one, it will just keep the normal size. And now you see suddenly it works on an iPhone, and we can try some of the other phones here. There's also a iPad here. So here it responds, but that's pretty interesting. Let's see the iPad Pro. So on the iPad Pro, you see we get the desktop layout. And that was what I was asking for before, that if the iPad is above a certain size, we wanted to show the desktop layout. So now it works. So I'll just post on Slack this viewport meta tag that you need. This is another one of those things that I always end up Googling. So don't worry about memorizing it. It's there's more important things to try to memorize, I think. So that means we actually made a responsive website now. If we go here and we pull here, we will see that we can switch between seeing the 2-column layout, and once we go on mobile, we'll see the layout underneath each other. So
sorry, can you go back to the photo?
yep. The styling?
Yeah. I'm missing something.
Okay. I'm thinking I'm just gonna post the full code to what I have here on Slack, and then we're going to continue on with the Flexbox exercise. Yeah. So if you didn't manage to get everything to work, you can try and compare with the code that I had.
One more comment on this, like if Zaki's gonna start doing the floats, maybe you should actually save the old CSS somewhere so you have a reference how to do floats and how to do flexbox, so you don't overwrite the old work, because then it's gonna be all lost. And you still need to remember and use maybe. There are cases where you would still use floats. So I suggest you keep this as a reference for yourselves for the future.
I think floats are really important to know how they work and be able to do a simple layout like this. Right. So as Jacob just said, don't throw away the stuff that you just did. So in order to not do that, I'm just going to copy this one, and then I'm going to, I had to think about my naming conventions before I started this. So I just make another copy of the entire project. Please do the same. And then we're going to remove some things from the new version.
And one more comment on top of this, mind like how Zaki is actually naming his stuff. So there is some continuity to it, because I've seen some of you guys have like index 1, index 2, index 4, index 7. And like if you keep adding that, you'll just get so lost at some point. So it's good to actually usually it's a good practice to have a folder with some meaningful name, like, I don't know, week 2, as like he had 2, then 2.1, 2.2, 2.3, whatever, and then keep index file and CSS file there, and that's it, and a story, instead of like multiplying meaningless names, because that's always harmful. In the long run.
Let's do that right now, because I was a little frustrated that I didn't do it properly in the first place. So let's do like that.
And that's like how you should structure your general work in here. I suggest, it's your call, but like I'd have like general folder for week 01, week 02, week 03 in HTML, CSS folder, then JavaScript 1 folder, week 4, week 5, week 6, and so on and so forth. Then like you get some sanity. And it's gonna pay off in the future when you have like gigantic number of files to work with.
Look at this beautiful structure that we have now.
That's perfect.
So let's take the Flexbox version, which is currently just a copy of the floats version, and let's clean that one up. So I think the only thing that we want to keep is the colors. And now you see why it was a good idea that I put them separately.
Yep.
So I'm doing going to delete everything else. And let's keep the box sizing, because you saw why box sizing is important, and it's also important when you're doing flexbox. It's the same thing applies there. Right. Any ideas how I should get started with flexbox then? Tessa? You have an idea?
I say instead of use the float, you have to use flex something.
Display flex.
Let's figure out what flex something is. You know, you probably didn't discuss that. That's actually another important point that I should maybe mention in my talk in the beginning. I mentioned the Teach Yourself channel. One of my favorite websites, and I think we did like around one of the previous classes where we posted like our favorite websites. But one of my favorite websites is CSS Tricks, and they have an excellent article that's called A Complete Guide to Flexbox. And that's usually the article that I end up on whenever I have to do something in Flexbox, because to be honest, I've been doing float layouts for years and years, and I'm not entirely confident with Flexbox yet. But you see here on the left side, they're telling us all the things that have to go on the parent, and on the right side, they're telling us all the stuff that has to go on the child. So they're telling us we need to use display flex, and that has to be on the parents. Okay, let's have a look at our HTML. So fortunately, we have this guy here called site container. So that one is kind of like the parent to header and side and main and so on. So that one is perfect for what we're going to do. So let's set the side container and do display flex. And I don't know if it makes sense to see if oh yeah, remember I was just about to refresh my file here, but I'm opening a completely different project now, so so remember to actually open the right file. Okay, so that's what display flex did. It actually took each of these elements and put them next to each other. So just crammed everything into one line. That's interesting. So let's have a look here again. So if we go here, flex wrap. So here it's telling us that by default flex items will try to fit into one line. You can change that and allow the items to wrap as needed with this wrap property. Okay, so that's interesting. So currently it's set to no wrap. That's the default. But if we set it to wrap, we can actually get it to go on multiple lines, and that's what we're going for here. So so let's try doing that. No, what's it called? Flex? Flex wrap, of course, yeah. Flex wrap, wrap. Okay, so now we are back to something that feels like something we've seen before, right? So let's just try to set the width of the aside and the main element. Oh. So we set the width here. Whoa! That's it?
It's the same.
It's the same layout, right? Yeah. Already? That was like 7 lines of code or something like that, right? There's one thing that we haven't done that we did on the other one, and that was applying padding to all the elements. So let's just try to do that. Side, main, footer. So that's actually the flex layout. I'll just show you the code so you have a chance of catching up. And then in a minute we'll just add the meter query the same way we did a minute ago. And I think maybe in the meantime, I could just post a link to their article. Oh, in terms of the plan.
It's lunchtime soon, so I guess that's if you manage to.
Yes.
Just one question. In the floating part, we had white background in your site, and I'm not sure. It depends, how much content we have. So how do we solve the floating?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Let's I'll take it on the class once I'm sure that everyone has followed on. So how many of you have the Flexbox working now? Okay.
I'm quite mixed up. I have two files and one control visualization now. Two copies. This is the first one.
Week 3. The new one. Rename it to Week 2 Flexbox. Week 2 Flexbox.
But still, agree. Maybe today, because I cannot guarantee the pencil. But as long as it passes
Week 2 Flexbox.
Okay, let's continue. So there was a question here. So do you have some questions about us, or can I have your attention? Okay, let's try to address that. Let's try to address that question there. So what he asked about was this: if we open up the floated version here, you see we have some white space down here, and if we open up our Flexbox version, it's not white anymore. Okay.
How can I solve it in the flow?
What would be the best way to do that?
You're not
it's,
the first
it's,
one
it's
to
a
ask
classic
the question.
problem. It's a really classic problem that I think. Yeah, you can always set a specific height, but the problem is if you set the height on their side, then somebody is going to type some more text over here, and then you have to set the height again. Yeah, that's an interesting idea. So if you have a div around here, yeah.
And then I will set the view height to 100%.
No, it auto, I guess. It's take some size of the.
So I actually I did this one on CodePen as well, so that's a really good place to go and experiment a little bit with it. So let's see if we can fix that problem. So the suggestion is to try to put a div around here, right? Yeah, the green and the blue one, right? So we'll go and say side content wrapper, something like that.
Maybe just give a background green to a body.
That's another thing you could do.
No.
Simple solutions
But-
usually work the best, but they don't solve all the edge cases also, right? So
The thing is, if you do it to the body, then maybe you have something going on in other places. Okay, so the padding is causing us problems right now. So let's refine that a little bit. So you see, we have side container, and then we do padding. Yeah, maybe I should remember this is something I did from home. So the code here is not exactly the same as what you just saw. I think what we did would actually work fine like this. Side main footer. Not like that. But I really like the background color idea. It's very, very simple, but it's kind of like then the entire side has the same background color. But maybe we could try employing it here.
But did you don't think if you put the background color to green, so this part white one, it will be without text?
Yeah, so setting the background color to green on the container we just created.
Yeah, if we put that, I guess the white one now will be without any text.
The white, I don't get what you mean.
What about if you change the width and the height of the side for
that's gonna fix it.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
It will be only without only 8 text. Not get it?
No.
Can I do You have here, from here to here, it was white, right?
Yeah.
And when you put it background color to green, it's take color. It's take green, but it's not right. But the text not full of this. But when you put the div, the text will be full of all. So the
Yeah.
text will be full.
Yeah, the point.
In this situation, maybe you can't write anything down or else.
Now you can fill more text in the blue one here. We can try that out. We can just do it. But I know there is one problem with this. The main, here it is. So a cool thing here on CodePen is you can just type lorem and then times 3, for instance, and then you get 3 paragraphs of lorem ipsum. So now I made the blue one, I made that longer. That's cool. It still works. It's green and all that. But what if I make it shorter? What happens then? C. Yeah, so now we have a problem.
That's what I mean. Actually what I mean exactly. You see now the text, it's full on this size.
Yeah.
But when you put it, so it means the text will be full on offsets part of the green.
Yeah.
So the text will be like separated to full all the green one, not take like one.
Yeah, exactly. So if you fill more text in the green, this problem comes out. So the solution we found here is only valid if you know that one of them is going to be longer than the other one, right? Yeah. But I think in most cases it is a solution because, like, I mean, if it's a site where you have the navigation on the left and then you have the content on the right, which is usually the case like this, you know that the content is probably going to be longer. And if you have one page where there's very little content, you could, at the very least, you could set like a min height on this one. And then you just need to make sure that the min height is higher than what's inside this guy over here. That way you make sure that that won't happen.
Well, the main takeaway from this problem is just use Flexbox.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, like, what we are trying to show would be relevant if you would need to support, like, really, really old browsers that don't, like, understand Flexbox. But that rarely happens these days. So it's a valid question, and a lot of people struggled with this, but Flexbox fixes it, so there's no point maybe to, like, really, fix it your own way. Just, use the Flexbox. Another thing, I don't know if I mentioned what lorem ipsum is. Maybe you are not all familiar with this. So lorem ipsum is basically a placeholder text that's been used in print for a long, long time. And it's just used because, like, people just need to fill something with something that looks like more or less real content. So instead of, like, looking for whatever the convention is that like people just use lorem ipsum. It's like some old Latin text, I think, from Cicero or.
It looks more real than like.
Yeah. Yeah, because the problem with random text is that it doesn't really resemble that like something that you would write yourself because you have long words or whatever, and this tries to mimic how a human, written text would look like. So that's why I used lorem ipsum also in the homework before, and that's why Zach is using it here. And like if you are trying to come up with some layout, obviously you can type whatever you want, but this is like you'll see this very often in many places.
Okay, we have one final step coming back to our Flexbox exercise before we can finish the exercises. And that was to try to make it responsive. So it's quite easy because it's actually pretty much the same thing that we did before. So we do a media query. And what should we put inside that media query, do you think? Okay. So let's just have a look at the Flexbox based layout. That must be this one, right? Flexbox, yeah. So if I pull that one together, it looks like that. And we want them to go underneath each other the same way as they did with the floated layout. So how do we do that?
It's the same way.
Same way. We just set them to 100% width. Aside main width 100%. And let's try it out. And it works.
And
amazing.
Since we were talking about with 100%, we also had one question about how to, if you go back to the desktop layout, there is, and make it, yeah. See, there's a little bit of a gap here on the,
didn't notice that,
on the footer, so we might also try to fix it. And it actually
it's obscured by the, or what's going on here?
Which gap? So
here.
we are having a small
in the corner
gap in here, right?
Yeah.
Do you all experience that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So what do we have there?
Actually, in the body tag, where you say margin 0, then it's minimize that.
Huh?
In the
Okay.
body tag, we have margin 0. And by default, all the browsers, they have 10 pixels.
Yeah. So we need
Yeah.
a reset.
Ah, okay, that's why.
You can do like the basic reset now. Okay, so like maybe we should we talk about reset a little bit? What you're doing now? So like
yeah.
browsers come with like basic initial styles. So they have this like gap of 10 pixels around, as you just said. And like they do it by default, but most web designers, developers, they don't like the fact that how the browser behaves by default. So this is why you apply something called a CSS reset. So basically by CSS reset, you would like, you say, please get rid of all those like visual rules that you're applying and try to equalize all the defaults for all the browsers in the same way. And one of the solutions to it, so you don't need to do it yourself every time, is something called normalized CSS. It's pretty elaborate. Like when you look at the source code, there's a lot of different elements that it's targeting. So it's not only the body itself, but it's also gonna target tables. It's I think gonna also target a couple of other things. So it's pretty long actually.
Yeah.
Another solution is something called Mayer reset. So it is, what was his first name? Eric Mayer?
Yeah.
Like superstar in old school CSS thing. So he came up with this idea that, can you Google for Mayer reset?
Oh.
So this should be the one. Yeah. So this is like the old way of doing it.
Oh yeah, that one I know.
So he came up with this set of things like if you scroll, elevate up. So you'll see that it's body, it's div, it's fan, all those things that you might have seen or haven't seen. He's just saying, please apply 0 margin, 0 padding, 0 border. Like I want this to be like the most neutral ever. But this is kind of old way of doing it. It works, it's fine. I prefer to go for normalized CSS because it's a little bit more comprehensive and it's actually targeted at newer browsers. But note both of those things down because you'll need them.
Maybe just show you how you can use that. So, do you know what a CDN is? A CDN is a content delivery network. In this context, it's just a place where you can include a link to something really commonly used libraries. It's just one way of including a library. Later on in this course, you will learn how to use NPM to do these kind of things. But what you can do is you can go here to this CDN, and then you can just copy. I would probably take the minimized version here. So you see this one is just a CSS file, right? And if I try to open it in a browser, it's a CSS file, but it looks a little messy because it's minified. But it's a regular CSS file. It's something like the stuff that we just saw before. It's just a normalized version. And if I add that one, I tried to do some stuff here. I didn't really know what I was doing, so let's delete that.
By minified, we mean compressed to a certain extent. Not maybe like in a zip file, but where you would just get rid of additional space bars. That's why it's all in one line.
So you can see the difference here if I open two of them next to each other.
I think
oh, that was the map. That was why. Yeah.
So these two are the same.
So this one, this is what it looks like normally. So that's what they are working with when they're working on the code. And then they have some application that they run, so it takes out all of the spaces, so it feels less. Okay, so after I put in the reset, let's see if that works out for us. It didn't.
What's the point?
Huh?
Can you make sure that this one has been actually applied? If it's downloads that, if you go to network, maybe to see if this is going to get downloaded.
Actually, in the footer, you have not changed text typing.
Maybe you can change the width to 100%.
Interesting. Yeah. I think we didn't set the width explicitly, so that could be a.
On the top, we have 100%. We can change to 100%.
Let's just try that first. Footer.
No, that doesn't fix it. I think I tried to. Will we try it?
Okay.
Yeah,
Did it fix it? Oh.
Was I not saying it?
No.
Okay.
I think it's spelling.
Not working for us here.
The width spelling is.
Unless, am I opening the right file now? I'm not.
Wait, I think the width. Can you check the width spelling?
You misspelled something?
Yeah. Thanks.
Okay, because that got me thinking like 100%.
There it is.
Because I not saying it.
Yeah. So, but it's good that we touched upon the normalized because you actually should be using it.
Yeah. Cool.
Okay, we fix this.
I think break time and then exercise time.
Whoever needs to.
So break first, right?
Yeah. Guys, so we see each other 2:30 because now it's the lunch break. Please be on time.
Could I see your CSS code for Flexbox?
Yeah. I copied the code on Slack as well. That's right. I put the code for Flexbox on Slack as well.
And we need to figure out what to do with the homework.
Yep.
Yeah, should we fetch a coffee? Or something?
Talk about what to do.
I'm just gonna stop the recording while.
Yeah, makes sense. You've got